Assalamu alaikum, my dear brothers and sisters, friends out there. I'm very, very happy to be with you for another short video. And in this video, I want to explore the division between those who follow the same monotheistic Abrahamic religion. Let's call it a religion for lack of a better word. But it is the millah, the system, it is the approach, it is the creed as espoused in the sacred texts. But why is there division, and what's the basis of this division? Let's look at the first verse. Chapter 42, verse 14. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وما تفرقوا إلا من بعد ما جاءهم العلم بغيا بينهم. And there we get the first cause of division. They fell into division after full knowledge had come to them out of mutual hostility. So the division is not based on knowledge. The division between Shia, Sunni, Bralvi, Tablighi, Sufi, whatever, Qur'anist, it's not based on knowledge for most of them. It is based simply on an angry response. There is simply the concept of turf, of my interest, of my domain, rather than what is true, what is right, what is real. And so we trump what is true, what is right, what is real. In other words, what is knowledge, we shift our focus away from what is knowledge. And the word knowledge is very, very well defined as what is true, right, and real, based on evidence. Right? What is true, right, and real, based on evidence, based on proof. So they deny what is true, what is right, and what is real. They deny knowledge in favor of advancing their personal agendas, in rather than baghyan, ilmun, baghyan bainahum. Baghyan means a sense of rebellion, antagonism, hostility. And that's really the first reason. And so if you want to look at people, and you must always identify who are the people that are hostile without reason, hostile without knowledge. So, and knowledge is not what my Maulana says. Knowledge is not what my Imam says. So those people who get hostile because they're banging on the Imam's, coat tails, they are not people of knowledge. They are the people of blind following. And that is really one of the reasons. Mutual hostility, anger, and responding purely out of anger, not based on knowledge, even though there is knowledge. Another verse that's interesting in this regard is chapter 42, verse 13, that says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم شرع لكم من الدين ما وصى به نوحا والذين أوحينا إليك وما وصينا به إبراهيم موسى وعيسى. About the creed, he ordained for your community the same that he ordained upon Noah, that which we now divinely communicate to you, which is referring to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and that we enjoined upon Abraham, Moses, and Jesus. Establish the creed and fall not into division in it. So the challenge here is to illustrate to those who want to be sincere embracers of the message of the scripture of the Qur'an, that it is the same message that came to Nuh and Ibrahim, while they are adamant, while they are insistent on the fact that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ brought a whole new, completely new thing, and for that he required thousands of books and literature. My dear Lord, those thousands of books did not exist after Noah. Those thousands of books did not exist after Ibrahim. And he did not produce thousands of literature, also his successors. You know, the best followers, the Qur'an praises the Hawariyun, the disciples of Jesus the most. I mean, they are really highlighted in the Qur'an as the most model followers, right? And so where is the Bukharis of the disciples, the Bukhari, the Muslim, the Sihah Sita, the tens of thousands of hadiths of Nabi Isa? Where is it? So if you're saying the creed of Muhammad is the same creed as the creed of Jesus and of Moses and of Abraham, where are the thousands of hadith books? No, it's not. The message of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is the same message as Ibrahim. It's a simple message, and the message is not complicated. It is not, you don't need to consult 3,000 books to know what that message is. He ordained for your community the same that he ordained upon Noah. Shara'a lakum, the Sharia. Shara'a lakum min ad-din, from the deen. Shara'a lakum, for you, from the deen, speaking to us now. Ma wassa bihi Nuhan walladhi awhayna ilayka. Wa ma wassayna bihi Ibrahim wa Musa wa Isa. The same legacy, the same message, the same instruction that was given to Musa and Isa. Now, if you tell me, no, Islam is a lot more. There's also, exactly how you must make salah. There's exactly how you must go to the toilet, how you must wash, and how you must stand in. Exactly everything, and find where are the remnants of those books. And there is no record that any of those messengers had thousands of books of literature. The message of Islam, the deen, that the Qur'an refers to as the deen, the creed, is absolutely simple and easy to understand. Let's look at another verse. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. Hold on together to the rope of God and do not fall into division. Now, what is the rope of God? What is the rope of God? Tell me something. Tell me this. You who are saying that the rope of God is also all the hadiths. What is the rope of God? Is there any... The rope of God is not the hadiths, because the hadiths is not something that all Muslims... How are you going to unite Shia and Sunni if you call the hadith the rope of God? Because the Sunnis refuse any hadith narrated by a Shia. So how can the hadith be a rope of God? And by the way, are you saying that the hadiths are literally from Allah? Are you saying the rope of God is the hadith, which means it is the words of Allah, it is the laws of Allah? How sure can you be? Remember, when you're not sure, you stand to be doomed. Because there's a very, very powerful verse that says that those who invent the law or the word and falsely ascribe it to God, they are doomed. وَيْلٌ لِلَّذِينَ يَكْتُبُونَ الْكِتَابَ ثُمَّ يَقُولُونَ هَذَا مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ. وَيْلٌ, doomed, damned, cursed. وَيْلٌ لِلَّذِينَ يَكْتُبُونَ الْكِتَابَ, who writes the book, kitab, the book or the law, with their own hands, then claim this is from God. That the rope of God is the Qur'an. The rope of God is the Qur'an. And if you want to say it's Qur'an and Sunnah, then you're not thinking. If you want to say it's Qur'an and Sunnah, you're not thinking, because the Sunnah is not God's Sunnah. God's Sunnah is in the Qur'an. The hadiths that you refer to as the Sunnah is something that Muslims are divided over. The very founding of it. You go and you ask Muslims, do you believe Abu Huraira is speaking with God's tongue? Some will say yes, some will say no. Right from the beginning, Sayyidina Umar says you're called Abu Huraira a liar. So if you're claiming that he speaks with God's tongue, the words that he ascribed to the Prophet Muhammad alayhi, then you are putting yourself at huge risk, because now you are making yourself liable to وَيْلُ لِلَّذِينَ يَكْتُبُونَ الْكِتَابِ أَيْدِيهِمْ. Woe! Curse, damned are they who write laws with their own hands and ascribe it to God. Very, very important that we accept. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ means the Qur'an. Hablillah. Not many ropes, one rope. جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا وَاذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ إِذْ كُنْتُمْ أَعْدَاءً فَأَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِكُمْ. Right, so remember when you were divided and He joined your hearts and dispelled the animosity and you became a united fraternity. When you were on the brink of destruction, but He saved you from it. Thus does God set out His evidence for you, so you may find your way. So we can assume the logic here is that if you reject the rope of God, if you want to invent more ropes, every guy has his own rope to God. If you want to take that route, then, as this verse is implying, then you meet with destruction, as we see today. As if you don't realize that Muslim traditional societies, whether it's in London or Afghanistan or wherever, they are imploded societies. They are societies that have self-destructed. What we see there are the bomb residue, the residue, the leftovers of a destroyed place. Go to these countries and you'll tell me that this place is like something that has imploded and people are just making the most of life right now. They're staying alive. It's not a flourishing society. It's not a flourishing society. Why? Because there's division. This of grabbing many ropes. Let's look another one. شهد الله أنه لا إله إلا هو والملائكة. And we are looking at chapter 3 verse 18. شهد الله أنه لا إله إلا هو والملائكة وأولو العلم قائما بالقسط لا إله إلا هو العزيز الحكيم. God's testimony is that there is no God except He. That is also the testimony of the angels and those who possess knowledge while standing up for justice. No God is there except He, the noble ruler. So, if you want to, where are we? Right. I think the verse there is very clear. Is that the shahadat, the kalima shahadat, the shahadat was God. This is not me. This is Arabic. Yeah, you're not looking at the translation that I made. Look at the Arabic. Shahid Allahu annahu la ilaha illa huwa. Is that all? It says there, Allahu la ilaha illa huwa. That is the shahadat that Allah ascribes to. And it is also the shahada that the malaika subscribe to, the angels. And it is all the shahada that those who possess real knowledge, the ulul ilm, that they subscribe to. And they do so as they qa'iman bil qist, as they stand for justice. My dear friends, this verse is very, very clear, is that there is one shahada, la ilaha illallah. You can add anything you want to, but that is not the necessary requirement. You're not going to be thrown in hell for saying anything more or less than shahida an la ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. Now you can say Muhammad Rasulullah, you can say Ibrahim Rasulullah, Khalilullah, you can say Isa Ruhullah, you can say, whatever you want to add, you can add. But this is the required kalima that unites all of humanity. Now that means that you can bring a Christian, you can bring a Jew, you can bring anyone, any person under the Abrahamic, or any other also, a Hanif, somebody who's not even Christian or Jew, but who adheres to the existence of a supreme and divine power and creator in the cosmos, and not in the cosmos, that transcends the cosmos. Shaida la ilaha illa, that is the minimum kalima. I saw another nice verse here. Most certainly the creed acceptable to God is the creed of natural compliance. Al-Islam. Al-Islam. The creed, and don't turn this into a proper name. Don't turn this into a proper noun. Do not make this a proper noun. Do not make this a proper noun. It is a description. It is an abstract noun. Islam. Al-Islam is an abstract noun which means harmony and peace. Harmony and peace and compliance. So if we combine all of them, we find the creed acceptable to God is the creed of natural compliance. Those who were given the code suffered division only after clear knowledge reached them. So there's no need for division when you go for knowledge. It was mutual rivalry. The fact that for anyone who suppresses God, surely God's reckoning is full. So over and over the message is division is there because people are not using knowledge to base their practice and their beliefs on. They are using other than knowledge. Now, what is the alternative to knowledge? You see, the alternative to knowledge is fantasy, is fallacy, is bunkum. Those are the alternatives to knowledge. Knowledge is what can be established as right, real, and true. What can be established as right, real, and true based on the evidence. That is what knowledge is. Knowledge is simply what can be established using proofs, using evidence, establishing what is right, what is real, and what is true. That is knowledge. That is knowledge. If you've got another idea of knowledge, that's your problem. But you cannot call anything right, true, or real if there's no evidence. Right. So what is evidence? Evidence is what appears in God's book. And what is God's book? It's the Qur'an. Now you want to give me evidence that comes from sources that are that suffers a lack of credibility. That's not evidence. You see, hearsay has never been evidence. Hearsay, if you take hearsay to a court of law, if you say Abdullah told me that Hassan told him that Yahya and Zainab told him, that is hearsay. Not even in the Qur'an is hearsay a legitimate testimony. You cannot go to court with hearsay, not even based on the Qur'an. The Qur'an is very, very clear. You need to have actual witnesses. Actual witnesses means those who saw, who heard, who felt, who smelt, who were there, who actually experienced the event or the phenomenon. That's testimony. Testimony is not he said. So when we speak knowledge, we speak what can be ascertained as true, real, and right based on evidence. And evidence is what is in the Qur'an or what we can establish with our eyes and our ears. That's why the Qur'an says, summun, bukmun, umyun, fahum la yarji'un. The Qur'an is not making up nonsense to say deaf, mute, and blind, they shall not return. The Qur'an means they are unwilling to use the faculty of hearing, the faculty of speech, in other words, of conversing, and inquiring and asking questions, and the faculty of seeing to ascertain the truth. And there's many other places Allah makes that same point in the Qur'an. Knowledge is what can be ascertained through evidence, personally, or through direct testimony. Knowledge is not what can be gained from hearsay. He said, she said, he said, she said. That is not knowledge. If you believe that hadith, the method of hadith, of the ahad hadith, and I'm talking a multiple chain of narration because that would be knowledge. If three people narrate independently, the mutawatir hadith would have a lot more credibility. But it's very difficult to find even one or two mutawatir hadith, which means 3 or 4 different strains of narrative from the same source. But there's another you see, we deal with knowledge or we deal with fantasy, fallacy, or bunk. Now, the most common way of the devil for making people adopt bunk, adopt fantasy, adopt fallacy as truth, because that is the problem of humanity, is that the devil comes, those who are mischievous, those who are evil, those who have another agenda except the agenda of righteousness, and focusing or worshipping the one true creator of the universe. They have to establish these massive, fantastic ideas and beliefs. How do they do it? What's the main tool by which they do it? And I'm not referring to keep getting people drunk or drugged or forcing them at gunpoint. No. The most effective way to brainwash people is to control the narrative. To invent a narrative that makes the truth seem plausible, that makes the lie seem plausible. So, for example, if I want somebody to, be very angry with somebody else, I have to spin a narrative around that person. I have to tell a tale. I have to make up a story, or I have to present anything to do with that person, the target, that casts him or her in a negative light. Now, I'm controlling the narrative, and if I don't allow that person to counter this narrative that I'm spinning, then by default, people will believe my narrative. Or those who are not in any way, like leaning towards justice or fairness, if they just take my narrative, then they're going to throw this poor man with stones. They're going to kill him. They're going to make him out to be a murderer or a thief or a scoundrel, all based on my narrative. So what I'm saying is that the spinning of a narrative, a story, is always the best way to get people off the right track. And that is exactly the role that hadith plays. You see, at the time of the civil war between Sayyidina Ali alayhi salam and Muawiyah, Muawiyah paid people, it's documented in history, that he paid people to invent narratives, to invent stories, so that the Muslims were gullible and easy to dupe, so that they actually started believing that Ali is really a culprit. Like, for example, there was, the coming to office of Imam Ali was preceded by the assassination of Uthman, or the I think it is the lynching. He was really lynched. He wasn't assassinated. So the mob lynching of Uthman, the third caliph, was the precursor to the civil war between Ali and Muawiyah. And Muawiyah spun the narrative that Ali is quiet, is unwilling to act against the mob that lynched Uthman, the third caliph. And that was the narrative he ran with. And that was the narrative. So it is coming with a story of he is letting the murderers go free. And so Uthman, who had very powerful family, the Umayyad family, a very powerful big family, first of all, they joined Muawiyah. Right? So all the Umayyads joined him, and they said, no, this is unfair. So they were incited by using this false narrative. Of course, we know now, if we read the books properly, and you can go and read the Nahjul Balagha, which is also a narrative, but you can make sense of it yourself, that the narrative was used to foment civil war, division, antagonism, anarchy. So I'm saying again, if somebody comes to you with countless stories and is not coming to you with proofs and with arguments and with facts and logical thinking and rational thinking and everything that has to check out, in terms of what is realistic, then he is spinning a narrative. The same that the corrupt Western media are doing with the oppressed in Palestine, where they depict the oppressed as barbarians, as unreasonable, as violent and project themselves as reasonable, as fair, as, the most moral army in the world. That is spinning a narrative. And that narrative that they spin is bamboozling almost every white man, every Anglo-Saxon in the Western world. The most of them, 90% of them. It is, fortunately now, because of the immense and the unthinkable suffering and the immense and unthinkable barbarism of Israel, is that narrative is coming undone. The narrative is, the wheels are coming off that big lie. When the Prophet, in the chapter called The Ant, when Sulaiman, the Prophet Sulaiman, when he was given news of this kingdom where the queen of Sheba, of this place called Sheba, where there was a queen ruling, the chapter extensively refers to the narrative. She spun a particular narrative which made her worthy of worship, or which made the sun the object of worship, and in which narrative her kingdom was founded on that narrative. If you look at the Roman Empire is founded on Romulus, the story of Romulus. Right? So in about, I think, 400, 500 before the Common Era, BC. So Romulus and his brothers, or his brother, they were abandoned somewhere in the area of Rome, Italy, the founding place of Rome, where they were raised by wolves. And that is why the wolf is the emblem, the mascot of the Roman Empire. Rome, in fact, Romulus means, I think, wolf. It's still the national animal of Italy, I believe. Italy's national animal is the wolf. So it's a narrative. You see, it's the background narrative of how it's the founding narrative. If you look at DC Comics and Marvel Comics, every founding story is a little narrative that gives you a liking, that makes the person's behavior acceptable. So if and so the narrative is the most powerful tool to create false knowledge, false behavior, false actions, invalid criminal behavior, criminal actions are often and the Qur'an says also in the chapter called The Ant, that the devil made their actions seem pleasing or seem righteous to them. So when we say that we go back to knowledge, we go back to this Qur'an, the one rope, what we mean is that anything else will lead you to a place where you will commit criminal actions, criminal behavior, and assume it to be virtuous. You know what? A lot of people, I have neighbors here who support Israel, who support, they do so because of this narrative of the final days, and the Christians will, must support the founding of Israel and rebuilding of the temple, and it will prepare the grounds for Jesus to return, and it's a narrative, and that whole narrative is justifying this Christian Zionism. It creates criminal behavior, a narrative that creates criminal beliefs or criminal behavior. Now you legalize now murder, massacre, mass murder, genocide because of this false narrative. So my friends, the most powerful tool that the devil uses is the narrative. And you know what is the Arabic word for narrative? Hadith. Hadith. Hadith is the Arabic word for narrative. Now the Qur'an says, what better narrative do you need than this Qur'an? There is no narrative outside of the Qur'an. The narratives and the stories and the anecdotes and the examples and the metaphors in the Qur'an are all there to guide and to steer away from criminality and evil and suffering and division. I leave that with you, my dear friends. I hope you find these words useful, and I'll speak to you again next time. Assalamu alaikum.